Hi, everybody. Welcome to Small Steps, Big Life. My name is Nathan Aswell. I'm based in Vancouver, Canada. I'm sorry if my voice sounds a little hoarse today. I'm just getting over some laryngitis. And I'm very excited because this is the first time that the show goes truly international. I've done a lot of shows with guests from the United States. But today I get a chance to speak to somebody in London, England, originally from White Rock, where I am right now, British Columbia, Canada. And he's been living in London for 6 years, isn't it, Andy? 7 years. Andy Bryce, EFT Master, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Andy has been a part of my life for probably about the last 6 months and has been sharing his time with me and teaching me about emotional freedom technique. For those of you watching who don't know anything about that, that's tapping. And so Andy will be speaking about his journey with EFT today and perhaps other things. Mm-hmm. Welcome, dear man.
Wow. Thank you, Nathan. It's great to be here. Appreciate that you invited me.
It's my great pleasure. It's my desire always is to invite juicy people into my life who are living exactly what I'm talking about, taking small steps to live big, interesting lives. And you fit smack dab in the middle of that category, good sir. So here you are. So let's just start right at the beginning for people who know nothing about emotional freedom technique. Let's give people like a minute overview of what that is.
Well, it's a derivative or a simplified version of Dr. Roger Callahan's thought field therapy, or TFT, which he put together psychology and acupuncture. Mm-hmm. And for his point of view, it was every different problem had a different algorithm or different series of tapping. And Gary Craig came along in the mid-90s, early 90s, and went, this could be simpler. And wouldn't it be great if anybody could do it and everyone could have it? And I was informed about it in the year 2000. And that, for me, was the 7th year of an extreme pain. I'd had an injury in my neck, and I basically had to turn like this. Had virtually constant pain. It went up and down, sometimes referred down my neck. And a friend called and said, I just got rid of a pain in 2 hours that I haven't been able to get rid of in 2 years. And I thought, okay, that's worth a try. And so in those days, you could download a manual and try it out. So I tried it out, and the first of 2 things happened. One was that I had a pain between the 5th and 6th vertebrae, cervical vertebrae, and it was like an ice pick with a burning point. And within 20 minutes, it was gone, and everything back. I also had a deep toothache that went down, toothache pain, deep inside pain, and I referred down my left arm. And that had, if I worked on the arm or whatever, it didn't change, but it was clearly connected to that. And as I began to use EFT for things other than just the pain, I began to realize that I've been carrying what other people thought of me on my shoulders. So I put a lot of stress here, and I was, like that. After a couple of months, I was pain-free. And that's more than 15 years of being pain-free from virtually anything. So and since then, I've traveled the world and taught EFT on 4 continents in 10 countries, 10 states in the US and Canada, and certainly here in the UK.
Wow. So tell us how you got from your pain relief to becoming an EFT master. What was that journey like?
Well, I think really to go back, I was working in the restaurant business, and I had a 2-year-old, almost 3-year-old daughter, and I had a car accident. I rolled a car into a ditch in Richmond, where, if anybody knows what living in the the lower mainland is like. There are ditches that are very deep with lots of water in them. And so I was 4 o'clock in the morning in a December night, just before Christmas, sitting on the roof of a car, listening to the water come in, trickling in. And I had some time to think about what I wanted and why I was here. And at that point, I decided I was going to be there for my daughter, who, as I say, was maybe 3 at the time, 3 in October. So after about an hour, I worked out how to get out of the car, which was wedged into the mud, wedged into the V of the ditch. And but for the first hour, it looked just hopeless. So I really had to sort of accept that situation. And then I saw that the back door of the car, you know, the 4-door cars, small ones tend to have the curve. And I thought, well, if I could get that point into the mud of the ditch wall, I could get out. And it just got the width of my head out and shoulders, and I was out.
Oh.
And out of that, within a month, I was in personal growth, spiritual growth seminars, and learning, like, what am I here for? How come I survived that? And what can I make my life count for? I got into Reiki. I was initiated by a Danish man who was trained in the Philippines, and so I was a master of healing from his point of view, and I'm now a Reiki master as well. But when I found EFT, it was like, this is great, because it isn't doing something to people, it's helping people learn how to do it for themselves. And here was something that was so simple. In fact, it's so simple, a lot of people go, that couldn't work, until they get an actual experience themselves. And I had that. And then in 2003, I had the opportunity to go to a workshop in Flagstaff, Arizona, and I had been talking with Gary Craig before, but I was actually one of his guinea pigs on stage. And that started something that's still going. Shortly after that, I met Dr. Look, Carol Look, in Chicago, at a course with Dr. Mercola and Gary Craig. And she called me later and said, come to Connecticut. We're putting on another big workshop with Gary. And I became part of the first emotional support team for people who needed personal attention during some of Gary's workshops, which was quite common at the time. So that's sort of how it started. I had been working for the government for 10 years with teenagers in care. And in the late 80s, I'd created my own bodywork for releasing emotional, stored emotions and emotional energy. So it was quite an easy leap to accept what emotional freedom techniques, which is a plural, it's many techniques to it, other than the tapping.
Right. So you literally get on the ground floor with Gary, with Carol, and so what people don't know is that you became one of only 29 people that were personally trained by Gary. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it actually wasn't a training per se as a proving.
Okay.
I attended, what I heard about was this program called the EFT Masters program, which Gary was not, he's never been big fan of traveling. Hasn't been one who wants to go across borders and things like that. So he felt that if he had a crew of people that could go out and share the EFT in a way that sort of was transparent and allowed what he wanted to go. So I believe that was really about sharing EFT to the world. And I thought that was a pretty good idea. And from what I understand, Gary and Ann Adams created the course And to get in, you had to provide videos. You had to show them what you knew. Then, if you were accepted, then we would actually perform sessions in front of Gary and Ann and the top EFTers from the world, which is where I met Dr. David Lake and Steve Wells, who provocative energy therapy, do their own version of EFT, called PET, and just created friendships with Brad Yates and some great people that I think I probably value that as much as what I've gotten from EFT. So what we had to do was demonstrate, and then there was an exam, and I think my exam paper was 32 pages.
Wow.
Pages of, just to demonstrate and to show that we knew what we were talking about and what we were doing. And so apparently 50% of the people who applied were accepted, and 75% of the people who were accepted actually finished it and were certified. And in August 26, 2008, I was certified as an EFT Master, and that's a pretty nice date with all the eights in it. I thought it was great. And it was just a tremendous validation, because it was so hard and it was so intense, and it's been a privilege, really.
Mm-hmm. And as I often say at this point in the conversation, nobody gets to where they are without the help of a lot of people. So I've heard you mention several people, Gary, of course, Carol, Brad Yates, whom I know, and I've enjoyed many of his videos. Mm-hmm. Whom else am I forgetting to mention in that list of people that you would like to acknowledge?
There's a woman in California, in near Los Angeles, Paula Shaw, who's probably one of the finest therapists I've ever met. I think she helped me complete my Reiki master. She and another Reiki master initiated me, and she's brilliant with EFT and just understanding people. So Paula deserves a big thank you. Tina Craig, just fabulous person, and I think probably the main one for me is my wife Maxine, because as a clinical hypnotherapist, psychotherapist, EFT trainer of trainers, we met at a master's program that she was in, and I was already EFT master, but it's been a tremendous 8 years married with her, so we're quite a team, I think. She's much more in the practical side, I think. I'm more intuitive.
And so she's the reason why I live in London.
That's right. We met in Dallas, Fort Worth, and got married in Las Vegas, went back to our respective homes, and 6 months later, I moved to London. And 3 years after that, we moved 100 miles west of London to a small town called Malmesbury, which has a 1,000-year-old abbey and lots of farms and probably more sheep than people.
Wonderful.
And I do most of my work now on Skype, or I travel.
Great. I'm now hearing my voice echoing in your computer. Maybe if you lowered your volume a little bit, we can reduce it. Cool. Yep. Great. So I think you've already answered this question a little bit, but let me ask it anyway. The next thing I like to say is, or ask about is, what is it that makes you continue on this path? And I think that the personal satisfaction that you feel from the results that you're experiencing, both yourselves and in the people that you are serving, makes it plain to see why you would want to continue. But as I ask you that, are there particular highlights, moments that you think of that just were incredibly affirming for you?
Yeah, I think at one point a friend called. She'd been, and this is 9 years ago, and she had been to emergency and with a distended hard belly, so much pain that they sent her home with a nil by mouth. We're going to operate on you at 2:00 the next day. And she called me the next morning, which is a Sunday, and so I simply did a size, shape, and color. And like, what is the size, shape, and color of this pain? And it was a huge black boulder that was bigger than her body. And when we focused on tapping around the emotions and just it gradually over an hour got smaller and smaller and smaller till the last image she had was of like a garden pea, but an emerald garden pea. So we finished around 9:00 that morning. She went into the hospital supposedly to have exploratory surgery, and the doctor said, well, there's no pain, there's no reason to operate. So I thought that was pretty good success. And since then, I would say now, I really love it when people, I've worked with psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, practitioners, trained acupuncturists, and I really enjoy when I'm working with someone and their practice improves. So I guess it's sort of a mentoring quality. And Maxine and I have just started our new website called tappingthrough.com. And I think that is a really key thing, because I like to help people tap through issues and get to the clarity, find out what's underneath it, rather than, well, a lot of people say, I'll tap into that. But if you can tap through it, that's great. Also, I have a very dear friend in Seychelles, actually, Patsy Anthony, who started out as a client, became a student, is now an advanced EFT practitioner, and is a teacher. And she's been using EFT in school for elementary kids for, I think, 8 years now. She's well ahead of the curve. And it just quietly gone about her business, helping children. I think she just taught the first group who had anxiety about the math quiz just to tap here. And she got a 28% improvement in the grade across this class in one 15-minute tapping. That was the only difference. So supporting people to help others is probably the biggest thing. And seeing people blossom, putting simple tools in people's hands that they'll use.
Wonderful. So this probably is a good time to ask this question. I think maybe people who are new to EFT would think of it as primarily being focused on solving issues that are physical and or emotional, because of course those are always related. But can you expand on that? Like, have you experienced people coming to you to deal with other issues, or is that pretty much the focus of it, is emotional and physical and or physical?
Well, I think recently I've worked with a young woman who had been sexually abused. That's more frequent than as a client that a situation I have that I like to think should happen. But when these things kind of happen, you're left as a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old to make sense of it. And quite often that process is done alone. Nobody talks to you about it, probably because you're ashamed or everyone else is ashamed, whatever. And so they make decisions about their lives and what they can do and what they can't do and what's safe and what isn't safe. And to help someone get through their decisions that they made about life, and to blossom and to step into their world with a new safety and a new excitement, I think that's there's tremendous joy in that. I get a lot of people with phobias and fear, which I think really a phobia is something that is a fear, but that is so physically experienced that that's what makes it powerful. And with the tapping, we can actually bring that physical response down to practically nothing. One of my favorite, can I tell you about my favorite phobia here?
Please. Yes.
Okay, so this woman in her 60s called from Alberta when I was still in Vancouver. And it was Tuesday, and on Friday she was flying to Germany with a friend. And she was falling to pieces because she had a tremendous fear of flying, but her friend, she had promised her friend that she would go. So I worked through the current fear that she had until she was calm. And then I asked her, well, have you ever been on a flight that was scary? And there was a flight from Central America to Toronto that was like crashing and banging. And we worked through all that. So she was actually laughing at the end of it. Then we visualized the whole flight to come to Frankfurt from her husband dropping her off and putting the cases on the ground. And everywhere she had a bit of anxiety, we just tapped through it. When we got 4 or 5 hours out, that's where you come over the ocean. And I happened to say, well, now you're okay. If you land, it'll be water. And she was really upset because she had a fear of water. So we had to work on that. A couple of weeks later, I got a phone call from her and she said, you'll never believe this. I flew to Frankfurt, from there into France, back, used EFT twice for about 30 seconds. No problem. Great response. Wonderful. She said, no, but then we drove from Calgary up to Banff and we actually stopped and looked at a waterfall. And that's the first time in my life I've ever been willing to walk and look at water.
Wow.
So as a side bonus, she got her fear of water released as well. And Crohn's disease has been several people I've worked with who've reduced or released issues on that level as well. As I say, the traumatic memories, but also performance. I've been working with people doing rock climbing, and now you're not going to be tapping while you're hanging from a rock face. Maybe someone's that good, but just working through the difference between climbing on a wall indoors and going out into the real thing can be quite a big deal. So I think Maxine and I are really focusing now on people who have reached a certain level, a plateau, and they want to improve, whether it's acting, sports, sales, performance of any kind. If they've reached a plateau and they're trying to get off it, we really love helping people get to that next place. So that's a bit of a variety there.
Wonderful. Let me just ask you this next, and then I want to circle back to where we are right now. Along the way, on every journey, there are things that happen that give us great pause, and at the worst of times can seem like roadblocks that either set us back or even make us even question the road that we're on. And as time goes on, we realize in hindsight that they were great gifts, that they somehow helped us to deepen our journey in ways that we couldn't have possibly imagined or experienced if we just kept walking in a straight line. As I ask you that, is there anything that comes to mind? Things that happen which, big life-changing events or deepenings?
Well, I would say that, the birth of my daughter taught me a new kind of love, because I think if you're thinking about love in relationship, there's always something in it for you. But when I saw her, I was totally in love in a way that it was, we're such close friends, even though we're 6,000 miles apart. I'm so grateful for her existence. And probably the other big one was had the car accident because while I'd always been grateful for getting out of it, I had the opportunity to speak to a group in Boston at an EFT Masters conference. And, on the way there, flying to Boston, I realized, I wouldn't be in this position if I hadn't rolled a car into a ditch. And that's when I realized I was grateful for actually getting into the ditch, not just getting out of it, because it changed the direction of my life, and it was probably or possibly intended to do that, either by myself consciously or unconsciously. I hope that I've been in my, wending my way towards this. I really feel that being in the service of others and being in the service of something greater has taught me my values, opened my heart, and given me purpose.
Beautiful. Well, I'm just thinking that one of the things that I really want people to know about you, which I don't think they'll know based on what's happened so far in this conversation, is one of the things that I most love and appreciate about you is you are able to, as you do this work with someone, and I'm speaking about my experience of you, are able to get the person, and I'm sure you do this with others, not only with me, there's a way that you can get people to just be much lighter about the whole thing, to be a little more disconnected from the drama that we all feel around whatever our issue may be, without the person that you're serving feeling that you are being condescending, or it's just a wonderful gift that you have of just being able to just approach the whole thing more lightly. And it's one of the things that I've greatly appreciated about you, because I can get really caught up in my own melodrama. And I'm just wondering, as I'm saying that, if there are other experiences that you have of that, of, people like me who, I don't know, maybe it's the artists in that you would deal with that kind of have more of that than others. I don't know. I have no idea what your experience has been.
Yeah. Well, let me say that, my favorite quote is, "Angels can fly because they take themselves lightly." And G.K. Chesterton, I think. But also, if you understand, I think there's an old saying in positive thought around change your thinking, change your life. And I take exception to that because over 35 years, I started going to Science of Mind Church and Unity in the mid-'80s, and I see it's a big challenge to change your thinking. And if you can change your state, that's a fabulous skill. If you know how to recognize the feeling you're in and change it to a lighter one, you have just found a way to trigger new thoughts, because the state you're in defines the kind of thinking you'll have. And if you're depressed, you're not going to have a whoopee thought. You're not going to have, if someone says, what do you want for dinner? It'll be like, whatever. So not only do we have a biochemistry for every mood, we have a range of thoughts for every mood. And if you can learn to change your state, that's important. So I know that when I'm working with someone, that if I was to mock them, they would be upset. But if I was to give it back to them in a different way, or to have a silly face, or to put it in a way, maybe what, do you recognize what works? How would I do that with you? Because I don't know. It's so second nature to me. I'm just bringing it back. And when you laugh about something that you've been very serious about, it's very difficult to go back to that state of drama. So we dissociate from that event or that type of thinking just a little bit, and that opens a wedge to work with. And I think it's a really effective tool. You wouldn't. There are times when it's not appropriate, but certainly when it is, it's very effective.
Yeah. I would have to completely agree with that. I think that, yeah, that image that you're sharing, what comes to mind for me is, there's this doorway or this wedge that gets placed in an old way of thinking and just opens a doorway of possibility that wasn't open before. But as I said, done in a light and loving way, and it's just wonderful to be someone who has experienced that. And in my experience of EFT, you're most welcome. In my experience of EFT, the stuff that I've seen online, well, maybe Brad Yates is an exception, although I haven't had a personal session with Brad. Everybody does tend to be more serious about it. We are tapping on this, so it's just wonderful to see that playfulness that is you be integrated into that experience.
Can I just add something?
Of course.
That it has to be in the context of absolute acceptance and love. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel that it's important to validate my clients, that I certainly have no better record than anyone as far as mistake free. And so what I feel when someone is with me in a judgment free way, I feel much safer. And I want to pass that on. So I accept people as they are, accept the thinking that brought them to this state, the feelings that they're having. And then once we're connected in that way, there's a bit more permission to be lighter about it.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
Being heavy isn't really gonna help much.
Right. So let's talk about what's next, dear man. Most immediately, you're coming to Canada, so let's talk a little bit about that. You and I have a mutual friend, actually, Reverend Carrie Hunter. She's the one responsible for connecting us, which I'm delighted about. And it is my great good fortune to be a part of a weekend you'll be having with her at her center in Victoria, CSL Victoria. So you want to just speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting that before I moved to England, so more than somewhere between 8 and 10 years ago, I did a workshop teaching EFT at CSL Victoria, but I think it was Kim then. And then there's been another friend of mine who is Joanna Drury was the minister. And now Reverend Carrie has been there, I think, about a year now. And when she was applying, we had some conversations, and we talked about, you must come and present. So it's only taken a year, but she and I met more than 10 years ago, and through another friend of ours, and I have such faith and belief in her. She's so encompassing in her love and acceptance of people. It's great to be around her. And as I understand, it's a very healthy congregation now, and a great group. So I'm looking forward to getting back there. Victoria is one of my favorite places. And a lot of people I talk to outside of Canada and the US, especially outside of BC, they have no idea that an island could be, that big. And I have to say, well, it's pretty much the size of England, because
Wow.
England is only 750 miles long, and guess how long Vancouver Island is?
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't realize that they were approximately the same size.
Yeah, carve off a bit of Wales, but the Vancouver Island is narrow and long, but it's quite similar.
Wow, amazing. And so what do you have up your sleeve for Sunday?
Well, I've been very interested in the past year. My wife and I discovered through another friend here, M-braining or multi-braining, which is aligning the head brain, the heart, and the gut. And what was really important for me with EFT 16 years ago was the immediate impact and the insight that I saw that, wow, this could really be utilized by myself, for helping others, but also to give it away and help people with that. And nothing has really impressed me since then to this extent. And Grant Soosalu has produced a really tremendous body of work, which is NLP based, but scientifically supported. He's really brilliant at that. And what we're going through is sort of introducing the concepts of that to tapping. And I believe Grant has no he didn't know what EFT was. And I was just this guy who came to the course. And now Maxine is a master coach certification. So really working with helping people access their inner wisdom and work to their highest benefit and to the highest benefit of all. By aligning the creative energies of the head, the compassion and passion of the heart, and the courage of the gut. And I realized that probably where it's really helped me the most is connecting to my gut, because I had an experience as a child that at 6 years of age, which I felt pretty much said, put the lie to everything before it. I thought I had a great childhood and I was happy and I was safe. And then all of a sudden I wasn't. I was chased by a guy on a horse and lassoed around the neck like a rodeo calf. And, my mom, 8 months pregnant, found me out in the field with rope burns and stuff. But so for me, being seen and, really making a big fuss, publishing, that kind of thing, even in the past few years has been like, okay, there's being seen and there's being seen. And with the M-braining, it's really been neutralizing that and bringing it into an alignment. Really big emphasis on the vagus nerve and the autonomic nervous system. Much more complex and a wider understanding of it than I've ever had before. And I feel that combining tapping and M-braining is a whole new level.
And on Sunday, will you be giving the talk at the service about this?
I believe, yes, I'll be intending to talk about acceptance versus resistance, and you know nothing about that, I'm sure.
No.
And how many subtle ways we can resist the unlimited love and support of the universal entity that's just waiting to give us stuff, and we're going, yeah, just slide it under the door. In some way we limit, some ways we resist. And to me, when we can accept what is, we have peace. Wherever distance between what is and what you think it should be will cause your degree of upset. And so that'll be the basis of the talk on Sunday. And then there's a workshop in the afternoon, and I will probably start with a basic EFT so that everyone gets a sense of what they can do. Some balanced breathing, reducing stress and anxiety in the daily life. And, but that's about it.
Oh, that's about it. I'm sure it'll be a powerful experience, and I'm glad that I will be there with you to experience it and to add a musical component to that. So, so that's what's happening in Victoria. You've talked a little bit about what's coming with you and Maxine. Can you just say more about that, what the shape of that is? Will you be, let me just toss it back to you.
Well, as we used to be trainers of trainers. In fact, we were director of trainers training for the AAMET, which is an international EFT certification body. But we are not associated now, and I'm seeing that as it's a not-for-profit organization, and I think it's probably what I would suggest to anyone, because virtually, the EFT universe and MET are really for profit and aggrandizing certain people. And I think when I first discovered EFT for myself and was sharing it, it was such a clean and generous situation. And I would like to bring back some of that. And so I'll be doing small, short videos on things like the setup phrase and why we use it and why we don't use it, when to do and when not to, how to just go through the basics. And then some of the things that, you have enjoyed with, how to reframe something from deadly serious to maybe not so bad. So I'm going to be doing some short videos on that, not necessarily with specific, things like Brad Yates is already doing a great job on doing scripts like, fear of flying or anxiety or wealth or whatever. He has got, I think, 600 videos up there. And there's, I don't need to be doing that when the wheel is already spinning. But I do feel like I've run into a lot of people that are supposedly trained in EFT, and they're tapping back here or they're tapping here. And there's just some things that aren't being passed along effectively. I do believe that we stimulate the vagus nerve when we're tapping some of these points. Vagus nerve is the superhighway between the gut. It's the longest nerve in the body, and it runs from up here down into the body. By influencing it, relaxing it, and interacting with it, that's a great benefit to us. And that's where Maxine and I want to go, is to, we've created our website, tappingthrough.com. Tappingthrough.com is, it was a soft launch a few months ago, and it's just starting to get rolling. But now I think it's in a situation where things can move forward. And we've had a couple of requests to create a certification program ourselves. And I think as trainers of trainers, we have 45 years of combined experience in working with people, helping them, coaching, mentoring, 15 years each with tapping or more. So, and Maxine has 3 different masters of NLP in 3 different areas. So I think we've got that, and the M-braining, we've got a lot to offer. So that's what we'll look at doing, that if there's enough interest.
Wonderful. Well, while we're on that subject, whenever I send the replay of this, I always include whatever websites are pertinent. So I'm just trying to keep track of that. So I'd like to include Tapping Through. Is there one on M-braining?
Yeah, I believe it's mbraining.com.
Okay.
I could have a look.
I think you're right. I seem to remember that's what that was.
And anyone interested could actually Google Grant Soosalu, which is Soosalu. He's based in Australia. I don't know if he sleeps. He must be a speed reader. I'm currently doing a year-long thing with him called Loving Your Life, which is really about, getting in touch with the things that really juice you up. That's been very informative. Plus, another book he has, which is, what is it called? It is called Avoiding the Enemies to Happiness, which I do recommend.
Okay.
It's only about that thick, and the computer is sitting on it right now.
Okay. I'll make sure. And then Greg didn't write it, did he?
Which?
Avoiding the enemies to happiness. He didn't write it. He's just suggesting.
Grant Soosalu did write it. Yes.
Oh, he did. Okay. All right. Great.
I have, just been associated with him for a year, and I've never seen someone as prolific. Sorry for jiggling things, but there is the actual book.
All right.
And so it's no lightweight, but it really covers a lot of things through positive psychology, NLP, and almost all of the MBIT sort of keys. And what we do is there's a regular pattern where you would start with an issue and how is it feeling in your heart, move it up to your head where you could get the client to, or yourself, really give it permission to, what do you think about this, and give yourself some opportunity to be creative around this issue, and then bring it back to your heart and how you feel about seeing it in this new way. Then taking the whole thing down to your gut, and from a gut point of view, what would you really need to be able to go forward with this? Because having your head, heart, and your gut aligned is going to be like having all your sled dogs on the same end of the sled. And otherwise, it's going to give you the kind of same thing you would get if you had dogs tied all around your sled. And then we come back up to the heart. And I find it really useful because I've been doing some recent sessions. I did a session with a trained NLP practitioner and EFTer, and we did timeline and a parts reintegration, which is an NLP technique of bringing two conflicting parts together. But we tapped and we did the embraining around how she felt about it, and because she had been taught the right way to do a parts integration, she thought it was going to take a lot of time. And because we did it my way, it didn't. It was within the hour. And she was like, "No, this is different." So being able to combine these things in a way, I think is going to, I feel like I'm probably the first one to see the connection, because Grant hasn't been aware of EFT and has asked me to write him an article about it. So I find that to be exciting, but also I really like the way he's proceeding. And he's quite a guy.
Wonderful. Well, I look forward to checking him out on Google and to reading the book. There was one other site that you mentioned. I didn't quite catch an organization which you were, I'll say, endorsing, for lack of a better word, an organization for certification.
We were directors of training for an EFT group called AAMET. So if you go to www.amet,
okay,
I think it's .org, but
okay.
I would say that anyone, if you were looking for a trainer or to get a level 1, 2, or 3 and to become an EFT certified, we have people through AMET who are working with NHS in the UK, and a couple of people are working at a university, through the university, and really getting some scientific backing and also some acknowledgement for professionals in the medical industry or arena. And my wife and I are very clear that we are not alternative. We are complementary, and we support people to go through with the best medical advice, and we help them emotionally. And so we're not against anything. We're for life.
Wonderful. Wow. Thank you, sir. I've made a good list of all those things. I will run it by you by email, shortly after we finish this call, just to make sure that all the things that we want to connect people to will be connected to the replay of this video. Is there anything else that I forgot to ask you, or anything that you've thought about in the last hour that you want to make sure that we share while we're talking?
Well, I think now they mention it, what has been very clear to me in the last few days is I have, connected very strongly with you. I really appreciate you. I'm quite clear on the vision of how much you will help people, and with your music and with your talks that you do. But you're not the only musician that I know who is, in a way, transformative. And I really appreciate how much music in general, but I also have a friend in Italy who sings at a certain frequency that is, I think, 420 megahertz, something like that. As a healer, she has another musician there, so there's a lot going on there, as well as our friend Beth in LA. So I think I feel like there's something I'd like to do to facilitate the transformational power of music. And the people are on that edge. I'd really like to see how I can make a difference there and support it happening either online or in person. But it's almost worldwide. With I think you mentioned Marguerite Robieff is Australia. There's a number of people. If we could put this power together, I'd be thrilled. So,
oh, that's exciting. I'd love to be a part of that. That sounds really juicy.
Okay.
Thank you, Andy.
My pleasure.
Folks, we have been speaking. My name is Nathan Aswell. I'm in Vancouver, Canada. It's been my great pleasure today to be talking with Andy Bryce, EFT Master in London, England. And he will he will soon be arriving in Vancouver, Canada for 2 weeks. And it will be my great pleasure to finally meet him in person. I've known him for 6 months, and we haven't actually met in person yet. So
that's where I was born, in Vancouver General. So yeah, I'm coming home.
That's right. Salmon returning upstream.
That's right.
So as I've mentioned, within the hour, I will have the replay of this video up on my YouTube channel and on my personal webpage, and I will include links to all of the sites that Andy mentioned and the book by Grant Soosalu. Hope I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for your time and attention. And if you're watching the replay, I hope this has served you well too. And please do reach out to Andy. He's just a fantastic human being. Meryl, thank you so much for being a part of this. You're an angel, and I just love your presence and your support in everything that I do. So love and blessings. Yeah. So love and blessings, everyone. Have a wonderful week, and thank you, Andy. I will see you very soon, and I'll be on your computer screen even sooner.
Okay. All right. Thank you, and my best to everyone. Thanks.
My pleasure. Bye, all.